Hi, Miguel Kakanindin here, back with another revisit to Pokemon Adventures. Today we are doing Volume 2, and here's where things get a little more interesting. We meet our third protagonist in this series, Green, who will also serve as a bit of a rival to Red. And Green was actually based on a female character who was supposed to be in the original Red and Blue games, but actually did not make the cut in the last at the last moment. And Green was actually implemented in the Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu, Let's Go Eevee games as a trainer that you could battle. So I'm glad that she's getting a little more recognition nowadays. Because she is she out of the three of them, she is a bit of an interesting character on her own. I do remember where her character arc goes from this point here, so it's very interesting to come back and see Green in the state where she is still like robbing people. She's still stealing to get by, and she's very good at it. She's very good at using her wiles to manipulate people, particularly Red. Red is very gullible near the beginning of this volume, and she is able to manipulate people into doing her bidding. Even people who know that she is up to no good still get tricked into helping her, as Red does throughout the beginning of this story. But I do remember where why Green is this way and how she comes to be this way. In this volume, we don't know a whole lot about her. We just know that she's greedy. She's out for the money. She stole a Squirtle from Professor Oak's laboratory. It's now a Wartortle. She has a Jigglypuff. She has a Ditto, and they're both very loyal to her. And they're both helping her out. They're all helping her out with her little schemes. One thing this volume does very well is that it shows how Pokemon can be used in multiple ways outside of battle. And in the games, this comes in the form of the HMs, cut, surf, fly, that kind of thing. And they're not particularly well received because you have to give up a move slot for them. But here we have actually a couple different ways. Red actually uses his newly caught Snorlax, which he caught last volume, but he's using it for the first time here. He uses his newly caught Snorlax to stop Green from escaping at one point, to block her passageway, and also to battle her. Green's Ditto at one point is used to trick Team Rocket into thinking Mew is right outside their game corner. A lot of different ways that Pokemon are utilized outside of battle, and how the relationship with their trainers is, it's just put on display, and it's strengthened by the way that the trainers count on them, which I'll give props to this volume for that. There are still a few moments that feel very rushed, particularly when it comes to the legendary birds. Nearing the end of this volume, probably I should probably explain what Team Rocket is doing. We encounter Team Rocket a lot more in this volume. They have much more of a presence. Even when they're not there, their presence is still felt. Their influence is still felt throughout this volume. We do see Team Rocket trying to capture Mew and trying to create Mewtwo with Mew's cells, the monster Pokemon that they're hoping will be their ultimate weapon in taking control of the Kanto region. And while they fail at the Mewtwo project, their plan B is to acquire the legendary birds. We do see that they have acquired all three legendary birds at the end of this volume, that they've acquired Articuno, Zapdos, and Moltres. And their hope is to create an ultimate Pokemon of sorts, so that nothing can stand in their way. No one would dare defy them, because if they do, they will get ultimately destroyed by this very powerful Pokemon. So we do know that they're out seeking that one ultimate Pokemon who will basically destroy anything in its path. Now, now that we've seen what they're planning, we can kind of have a better idea of what Red and Green are trying to do whenever they try to take them on. Red is very much aware now that how dangerous Team Rocket is. Not only does he know about their experimentation, not only has he had experience with the Pokemon that they've experimented on, but now he knows exactly why they're experimenting them for, and that makes him very motivated to stop them. Red very much becomes a quintessential hero throughout the course of this volume, which I'm really starting to appreciate. Meanwhile, Green is just out for she's just out to capture these Pokemon for herself, for her own personal gain, kind of like Team Rocket, except she is less morally. She's a little more morally gray than Team Rocket. Team Rocket is very much like evil all the way, but Green is Green is much less. She wants things. She wants things for herself, but she's not willing to go the extra mile that Team Rocket is, or she's not. Rather, she doesn't have the resources. I still wouldn't say that she's completely good yet, or I would still say that she's more on the bad side than she is on the good side, but you know, we will encounter her more along the way. We'll see how she deals with Team Rocket in her own way and for her own personal reasons. And we do encounter Blue a little more. Blue has his cocky side has kind of lightened up a bit. While Red is still kind of haughty in a lot of ways, and he still has a lot to learn, Blue has really intensified his training, and he's not as cocky anymore. He's still very much aloof. He's been humbled. Especially at one point, he tries to train a Porygon, and he finds it completely ridiculously hard because the Porygon that he acquires comes from the Celadon Game Corner, and they're notoriously difficult to train. So it's interesting to see how Blue has developed. One thing I kind of wish was more prevalent, particularly in these first few chapters, is I wish we got to see more of Blue getting humbled. Blue, like, learning his lesson, Blue learning not to be so cocky all the time, that he has to really focus on training, and really focus on, you know, overcoming Red. But we don't see a whole lot of that. We see Red develop. We don't see Blue develop. And Green, like, I remember we see much less of her develop as well. But I do remember that she'll have a much larger role to play in the next volume as well. So that's one thing that I kind of didn't see as a kid, but I kind of see it now. That Blue doesn't have. We don't see a lot of how Blue grows throughout this story. And you know, as you probably know, I'm doing the Naruto series at the same time that I'm doing this series. So when I see like Naruto or Sasuke or Gaara grow like gradually throughout the series, it's kind of jarring to come back to Pokemon Adventures and see people like Blue like jump from like, oh, he's really really cocky, to now he's just aloof and very focused on his training. We do see we do see the difference, more of the difference between Blue's type of training and Red's type of training in this one. There's a moment where their Pokemon and Pokédexes get switched, and we see that Blue's Pokemon are so focused on training that they will actually, without being told by their trainer, they will actually exercise themselves outside of battle. Despite Red telling them, hey, you know, take it easy, you can train later, let's just have fun today. Meanwhile, Red's Pokemon are more focused on that emotional connection with their trainer that they gain from having fun with their trainer than they are about actually training, actually exercising. So when Blue trains them his way, they actually have to, you know, really push themselves a lot more than they did with Red. And as a result, Red's Pokemon get a lot more physically strong, and Blue's Pokemon get a lot more emotionally invested in their trainer, which is actually really funny when they finally switch back, when they finally trade their Pokemon back with each other. Blue's Pokemon are they're very cuddly with Blue, which he's not used to. He's like, there's something different about them. Meanwhile, Red is completely overwhelmed with the amount of like hardcore, you know, we are now very powerful nature of his own Pokemon, which it's really funny to see. It's really funny to see. And Red does acquire a couple of new Pokemon. We do see Pikachu, as I mentioned in the previous volume, is still one of my favorite members of Red's team, because here we see Pikachu develops a lot more of a connection to Red. There's a moment where Red gets lost in the Safari Zone, and his Pokemon are forced to stay behind because they're not allowed into the Safari Zone. So while the rescue team that goes into the Safari Zone to save Red brings Ivysaur, Poliwrath, and Pikachu. By the way, Red's Bulbasaur has evolved into an Ivysaur at this point. But they bring Ivysaur, Pikachu, and Poliwrath with them. And Pikachu is so, like, distraught that he actually calls out to Red, like, "Where are you?" And it's very heartbreaking to see Pikachu this way, because it shows just how much he has come to love Red as his trainer, now that they've been through so much together. And we do see more of the gym leaders. We encounter Sabrina for the first time. She is also a member of Team Rocket, and it turns out Lieutenant Surge is also a member of Team Rocket. So Koga, Lieutenant Surge, and Sabrina. Sabrina comes in at the very end to show that, okay, we have our base set up in Saffron City. Come to Saffron City if you ever want to see your professor again. Excuse me. And we also meet Giovanni for the first time, who, you might recall, is the actual leader of Team Rocket, as well as the gym leader of Viridian City. And he comes in as a paleontologist. He comes in to assess Red's abilities and see, like, is he any threat to Team Rocket? And it's here that we kind of see where Red lies on the moral ground of Pokemon. We already saw this, but we see how it is in comparison to Giovanni, who recognizes him as a talented trainer, but also believes there are times when you do need to kill the opponent's Pokemon if you want to win. And he kind of brushes it off as, like, a necessity, like, these Pokemon, if you don't kill them, they will be back for you, they will kill you, and you need to take them out while you still can. But we can probably assume that Team Rocket's brutality it goes deeper than that. It's not so much that they feel it a necessity, it's more that they just don't care enough to have that respect for life. Which is interesting. I like how they implemented that life or death sort of thing with Team Rocket. The one thing, like, the anime doesn't usually go into Pokemon dying. It does so every once in a while, and to varying responses. But Team Rocket isn't usually one to kill Pokemon, in the anime anyway. Here, they will very much kill Pokemon. They're very likely to kill Pokemon. Because Giovanni is just that ruthless. Team Rocket's goals are that important to them, and they are that uncaring about the welfare of the Pokemon that they capture and experiment on. We do see the effects of Team Rocket's experimentation all over the place. We encounter Erica, who is trying to help an Eevee who has been experimented on by Team Rocket, going through immense pain. While when Red finds it, it is actually able to transform freely between Jolteon, Flareon, and Vaporeon. It's 3 different evolutions at the time, by the way. Can't forget that this came out during the first generation of Pokemon, when Eevee only had 3 evolutions. But this Eevee is able to freely transform between its 3 evolutions, but it goes through intense pain when it does so. So we see the effects of Team Rocket's experimentation. We also see this with Gyarados. Misty and her Gyarados return, and Misty actually lends Red her Gyarados. And we see the effects of how Gyarados, of what happens to Gyarados when it encounters Team Rocket again. Kind of goes through a PTSD flashback sort of thing. And it's very heartbreaking to see Gyarados like this, because we know just how absolutely cruel Team Rocket can be to the Pokemon on whom they experiment on. This brings me to my one gripe, well, multiple gripes with this volume in particular. Not only, we do, for the most part, like, the first, like, 2/3 of the volume, they do have much better pacing than the previous one. The battles are, the battles feel like a good length. The story doesn't seem too rushed. The arc spans multiple chapters, so we can follow it along very easily. But when we near the last few chapters, the pacing becomes like extremely extremely bad, especially the chapter with Articuno. It's very difficult to follow. Like, Red at one point is telling his team like, hey, keep an eye out for Articuno, let me know if you sense anything. But the next thing you know, he's like, wait, where did the Articuno go? Like, when did you find the Articuno? That entire chapter seems extremely rushed, extremely very disjointed, and Team Rocket in that one seems like to pop out of nowhere, and it's such a shame. Like, I remember these being so great as a kid. Like, I was very happy to see Articuno and Moltres, all these chapters regarding them, but when I'm looking back on them, I'm seeing that the pacing is very flawed. It's kind of hard for me to follow the story in those cases, and it's a shame. It's a shame. It really is. So, that being said, I'm looking forward to moving on to the next volume. That is, we have ended on a bit of a cliffhanger. All the people from Palatown are missing. Professor Oak is also missing. Sabrina says if you want to ever find out what happens to them, you have to come to Saffron City. Blue's Charmeleon has evolved into a Charizard, again showcasing just how ahead of the game Blue is when compared to Red. His Charmeleon is now a Charizard, while Red still has an Ivysaur. So again, like, we see how far ahead Blue is with regards to that, but Blue and his Charizard are going to Saffron City to take on Team Rocket. Red's probably going to follow them. Green is in there somewhere. I do remember kind of what happens after this, but I'm still looking forward to seeing it because I still really love this part of the story. So anyway, I will see you then for Volume 3.